Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh to the evaluator. I'm Nur Natasha binti Ramli, and this is my proposal presentation of systematic review entitled The Effect of Caffeinated and Decaffeinated Coffee Consumption on Metabolic Syndrome Outcome. So this is my presentation outline. The first chapter in this proposal presentation is background. Metabolic syndrome is a cluster of complex metabolic abnormalities, including abdominal obesity, dyslipidemia, hypertension, hyperglycemia, and insulin resistance. The causes of METs is often influenced by genetic and lifestyles, such as intake of alcohol, sedentary habits, and dietary habits, such as high-fat food and sugar-sweetened beverages intake. So a study by Sigit et al. In 2020 stated that METs impose a huge burden on public health, with an average of 12 to 37% of Asian population and 12 to 26% of European population had been suffer from METs. So how to combat this disease? Wolska et al. Stated that the most influential preventive intervention is by dietary intervention, such as coffee. In general, coffee consumption could reduce the risk of T2DM and liver disease. Bioactive compounds in coffee, such as chlorogenic acid and caffeine, show positive contribution on this disease. Chlorogenic acid can reduce oxidation of LDL and reduce the release of glucose into bloodstream after meal. For caffeine, they can reduce the inflammation process, thus protect from free radical and endothelial damage. So a study by Ding et al. In 2014 stated that the moderate dose, which is 3 to 5 cups per day, could reduce the risk of CVD, while the higher dose, which is more than 6 cups per day, could neither decrease or increase the risk of CVD. Okay, next we will move on to rationale. So the reason I'm doing this study is because there is a limited information on the effects of caffeinated and decaffeinated coffee consumption and its dose response on metabolic syndrome outcomes. So this systematic review will provide a new evidence on the effects of caffeinated and decaffeinated coffee consumption on METs outcome, and also provide a new evidence on the optimum dose of caffeinated or decaffeinated coffee for the observed outcomes. This review have two research questions. The first one is, what is the effect of caffeinated and decaffeinated coffee consumption on specific metabolic syndrome outcomes? And the second one is there any dose response between caffeinated and decaffeinated coffee consumption on the metabolic syndrome outcomes? So, the objective of this study is to systematically review the effect of caffeinated and decaffeinated coffee consumption and its dose response on metabolic syndrome's outcome. Okay, next we will move on to methodology. The first items in this methodology is eligibility criteria that lists down any inclusion and exclusion criteria. For inclusion criteria, this review will include articles that have a participant of individuals adult aged 18 to 65 years old with metabolic syndrome features irrespective of their gender and races. This study will focus on RCT studies that had been published between 2010 and 2020. We will also include primary research study that written in English. For exclusion criteria, this review will exclude articles that have a participants taking any medication that could affect blood glucose, blood pressure, and or cholesterol levels, and also participants that taking any vitamin supplements. We will also exclude studies that include pregnant or lactating women and also individuals that follow vegetarian diet. Next, in info sources, the two main databases that will be used is PubMed and Scopus. In addition, The reference list from eligible articles from these two databases will be reviewed to find further relevant studies. In search strategy, mesh database and other free text terms will be used to identify the search term that related to metabolic syndrome parameter, and coffee consumption. The search terms will be combined using Boolean operators such as AND or OR. I have divided my search term into two clusters. The first one includes med terminology and type of coffee. So this is my keywords for these two keywords. The second cluster will have meds outcomes and type of coffee. So this is my keywords. For study selection, article that will be obtained from keyword search in PubMed and Scopus will be totaled up, and all the articles will be uploaded in Mendeley referencing software to identify and remove duplicate articles using remove duplicate function. Next, the titles and abstract will be screened based on the predefined criteria, and any irrelevant papers will be excluded. Then, the full text articles are reviewed for eligibility, and also any relevant publication will be excluded with reason. Lastly, the studies that meet the inclusion criteria and thus retained for qualitative analysis will be used in this review. In data collection process, the first author will search for the articles and review all possible studies independently. Then, the second author will check the extracted data from the possible studies. Any disagreement in the eligibility of an article will be resolved through consensus between these two reviewers. Information that will be extracted from all the selected articles are first author's name, publication year, country, sample size, gender, age, study duration, and the amount or dose for coffee consumption. In data items, because will be used to extract data in each eligible studies. For participant, individuals adult age 18 to 65 years old with metabolic syndrome features irrespective of their gender or races. Then, caffeinated and decaffeinated coffee consumption will be used as intervention. Then, intervention will be compared with placebo or plain water. For outcome, we will measure the effect of caffeinated and decaffeinated coffee consumption on meds outcome. For study design, this review will solely focus on RCT. For assessment of study quality, JADAT score will be used to assess the quality of clinical trials. A score will be attributed for each trial to each address items with a possible score of 0 to 5, and 5 is the highest quality level. Studies with a score of 3 and more will reflect a good quality of reporting, whereas a study which is below than 3 indicate a study of poor quality. So this is the example of JADAT score table that will be used. For references, so this is my references that I use in this proposal presentation. This is my appendix. So this is the detailed search strategy that will be used in my systematic review. Next, the example of data extraction instrument that I've already mentioned before in data collection process. So this is my rough Gantt chart and also milestone. So that's all from me. Thank you.